Hello everyone! Today I'll be giving a lesson on one of your favorites, Chopin's Etude Opus 10 No. 4. Compared to other Chopin etudes, Opus 10 No. 4 is relatively easier. Now, don't get upset. Let me clarify. It's easier compared to other Chopin etudes, but only if you grasp the core principle. If you understand this, you'll find it's not as difficult as it seems. So stay tuned until the end. First, I'll explain Chopin's intentions and the structure of the piece. Second, I'll go over practice methods. Third, I'll show you how to increase tempo. And lastly, I'll talk about pedal techniques. To begin, let's examine Chopin's intentions behind this piece. Before we dive into the structure, let's look at the key. This piece is in C# minor. If you're a music major or have been playing Chopin etudes for a while, you should definitely know this key signature. If you haven't learned about it yet, I highly recommend watching our lesson videos on chord theory or key signatures, because understanding keys is crucial for musical structure. In this piece, C# is the most important note and C# minor is the essential key. You can see this in the key signature, which has sharps on F, C, G, and D. This is called the key signature, and it indicates C# minor. Now, let's look at the first measure. It starts with C# and the last measure also ends on C#, reinforcing its importance. Keep in mind that C# is important in this piece. Next, let's go over the time signature. This piece is in 4/4 meter, meaning there are 4 quarter notes per measure. When we look at the first measure, do we see 4 quarter notes? Actually, there's only one. This is called an incomplete measure. As I mentioned earlier, the first beat should be C#, not G#, so we skip the incomplete measure. Since this is the first beat, think of it as starting with C#. Remember, I mentioned that understanding Chopin's intention is crucial. This etude has an overall sense of rhythmic instability and dissonant harmonies. Does it make you feel calm when you listen to it? Probably not. It may feel like someone is chasing you, and because it's in a minor key, it doesn't have a bright or cheerful feel. When playing it, you won't find it relaxing or peaceful. Typically, a rhythm that feels comfortable would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, with a strong first beat and accents like strong, weak, medium, weak. This aligns with the rhythm of our heartbeat, which creates a calming effect. But in this piece, we have an incomplete measure, entering on a weak beat 4/1. This is a core principle throughout Chopin's Etude Opus 10 No. 4, with both harmonies and rhythms contributing to the unsettling feeling. So yes, you're meant to feel a bit uncomfortable while playing it. And as you can see, even though the piece is in C# minor, it doesn't start with C# but with G#. So, where does C# fall in relation to G#? Let's count. C, D, E, F, G. It's the 5th note, right? After G#, C# naturally follows. This might seem like a minor detail, but here's something important to remember. If G# appears, C# will follow. This signifies a resolution. If you remember only one thing, remember this. After G#, C# is likely to come. So the rhythm goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. With this sense of anticipation and instability continuing throughout. Remember, it's crucial to maintain this feeling of tension. On the weak beat of the 4th beat, this note comes in first. And then don't forget that this next note is actually the downbeat. It should go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 to keep the correct rhythm. This principle remains consistent throughout the piece. Now, let's break it down step by step. In the beginning, it's marked forte and then immediately forte, piano. What does that mean? It means you play forte and then immediately switch to piano. Next, let's look at the pattern in this piece. The notes ascend stepwise. And if you play it this way, it becomes much simpler. Plus, the fingerings are consistent, making it easier to play. But remember what I emphasized. The first beat is crucial. Think 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, where each beat aligns with specific fingerings. The 3rd finger lands on the 2nd beat, then on the 3rd beat, then on the 4th beat, consistently following this pattern. The first note of the pattern seems like a downbeat, but be careful. This note is the first beat. This is very important. Why? Imagine reading "Let's eat, Grandma" versus "Let's eat, Grandma." See the difference? The first one invites Grandma to eat with us, while the second, well, it sounds like we're planning to eat Grandma. Where you place the punctuation changes the meaning entirely. Music is similar. Where you place the downbeat can entirely change the meaning of the piece. So while the pattern might look a certain way, you need to remember that the first beat is on D sharp, followed by E and F sharp. This keeps both the right and left hands perfectly in sync, and it helps maintain rhythm without straining your arms. Sometimes arm tension comes from this very principle. When the right and left hands don't align, it creates tension because we feel insecure, which causes us to tense up even more. So it's essential that you fully understand what I'm explaining here. You need to feel the downbeat. Knowing the downbeat makes all the difference. This principle applies throughout. As I'm showing you, it starts here and then moves on like this. But again, you need to know the first beat. Today, since it's the first lesson, I'll focus a lot on these principles. Don't think of it as boring. This foundation is crucial. When practicing, lift each finger individually to develop finger independence. It's essential to train finger independence, not the palm, so avoid moving your palm too much. If you're only moving your palm because it feels easier, it's better not to practice that way at all. Lift each finger as you practice. This approach will lead to true independence in your playing. Once you've developed that independence, you can increase your speed and your fingers will move naturally without tension. This is why you need to practice by lifting each finger in the beginning. If you don't start etudes correctly, it's easy to develop bad habits, which are difficult to correct later. So focus carefully from the start. Don't practice mindlessly. Let's look at the left hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
This melody has a very sad tone to it, don't you think? While etudes are often focused on technical exercises, thinking about the melody can help you solve some of these technical challenges.
La, sol, fa, mi, fa, mi, re.
The left hand here has a dark, sorrowful feel, so experiencing that emotion in your playing will help you. Now let's move on. Here, both the left and right hands are the same. C sharp, G sharp, E, a C sharp minor chord. Use your wrist, allowing it to rotate. Many students are afraid to let go of the notes, fearing they'll lose them, but don't be afraid to release. When I say to rotate, don't overdo it or make exaggerated movements. Let it happen naturally, keeping your wrist aligned. Let's take a closer look at the sheet music. Notice the G sharp and A are 8th notes with stems pointing up, and the 16th notes also have stems going up. Did you notice this?
Sol, la, fa, sol, mi, fa, re, mi, do.
It seems like Chopin wanted to add another voice, doesn't it? This is what we call a voice part, and it creates a single melody line. Now, the same applies to the left hand. You'll use rotation, moving your wrist to follow the notes. I suggest directing the movement toward the top note. See how I focus on each note in turn, releasing the hand after each note to keep it fluid, then take it off and it becomes like this. Now we have another phrase here. Notice how the phrase ends, but then immediately begins on the downbeat again, creating tension. They play it with extra emphasis. If you look closely, the A here isn't the downbeat. People tend to play accent this A, but the downbeat is actually on G sharp in the pattern
1, 2, 3, 4.
So G sharp is the true downbeat.
1, 2, 3, 4.
creating this rhythmic instability we keep encountering. You have to know in your head the unstable elements that are offbeat. Next, you might wonder why there's an F double sharp here. What does double sharp mean? It means we raise the note by 2 half steps instead of 1. You might wonder, why don't we just write this as G instead of F double sharp? Why does the D sharp 7 chord appear here? This D sharp 7 chord appears here because of the musical grammar I mentioned earlier. As I mentioned before, there's a kind of musical grammar. After G sharp, we often see C sharp, and similarly, after D sharp, we often see G sharp. If we analyze this, G sharp is the 5th scale degree of D sharp. Let's count. G, A, B, C, D. So G sharp is the 5th note above D sharp. In musical theory, there's a strong relationship between the 5th and the 1st scale degrees, often moving from the dominant to the 1st tonic. So here we have a D sharp 7 chord, which consists of D sharp, F double sharp, and A sharp. That's why we use F double sharp in this chord. After the D sharp 7 chord, the phrase starts over. Do you see how this measure is identical to the first? This principle is embedded throughout the piece. If you've studied Czerny thoroughly, you'll recognize this pattern and understand how Chopin applied it here. So you can take a musicalist Czerny class. We've only covered 2 lines today, but there's already so much to learn. All of this is reflected later in the piece as well. So even just practicing up to this point, you should be breaking a sweat, fully focused, and maybe even burning a few calories. Got it, everyone? Make sure to come back for part 2. Don't run away. See you next time. Thank you.